In today's video, I am going to be explaining and talking to you about zone defenses and why it's almost like if you are cheating if you are running one. Now, I'm not just going to talk about a half-court zone, but also a full-court and half-court trap as well. Because when you're talking about younger players, a lot of coaches, if they see you running a zone, they're going to be yelling at you, "You're cheating." But I'm going to explain to you why certain coaches are not cheating when they are using a zone, but also why it feels like you're cheating, because whenever I run a zone, I feel like I'm cheating. But really quickly, make sure to go check out my Unbeatable Basketball Zone Defense book that is down in the description below, because what it will do is it will double the low post, but also trap the corners without leaving any other players open. It's a very deadly defense, so go check that out. And if you like the idea of me writing on this app, it's called Playbook, and it's down in the description below. Okay, so one of the most popular defenses that younger teams will use is a 2-3 zone. And the idea here is you're basically cutting off the key and you're not allowing any team to be able to get layups. And while you may be saying, well, it's just a zone, it's not cheating. Well, if we look at 9U teams or 10U or even 11U teams, like I coach an 11U team, we're very good from the 3-point line, but many teams are not. I've had games where we've hit like 12 threes in a single game. And to me, 12 threes at 11 years old and 10 years old is a pretty solid number. So teams usually pull out of their zone quite quickly. But why does this seem like a cheating way of winning? Well, anytime a player drives on a 2-3 zone, these players here will collapse because this is an overlapping zone area. If player 1 passes out to player 3 and he tries to attack this gap, we're going to have players 4 and 2. They're going to be closing that off and the defense sort of shifts over. Because now this is a double team location because the zones overlap. If player 3 kicks the ball out to player 5 and player 5 drives, because this is an overlapping zone area, you are going to have player 5 cutting off player 5 blue's ability to drive towards the basket. Player 4 traps that side because now he's along the baseline. He can't go out of bounds. All he can do is just back straight up, in which case he is then in the corner. And of course, while that is outside of player 5's trapping location, if I as a coach am running a 2-3 zone, I am allowing my center to leave to be able to trap, because now we can just shift this 2-3 zone over and he's pretty much dead. I know not many teams run it this way, but I personally do. And then let's just say, for example, we're playing up against a team, or you're playing up against a team that is a pretty good shooting team, and you want to still guard their ability to shoot, but also not allow them to get into the key. Well, a 3-2 zone is usually an option for you, because then if they attack this gap, these guys are going to close. Player 4 is going to move out, 5 moves over, 3 moves over. Player 1 passes it out to player 3. If he tries to drive, you're going to have these guys close on him. If he kicks the ball out, depending on how the defense is ran, this could be a trap, in which case now he's done. The whole idea in a zone is to move the other team towards the sidelines or into these spots, depending on the zone, to trap. Most teams, however, at the younger level will not run zones to trap. What they will do, however, is to run a zone to force you to be able to shoot that 3, and because they've already got 3 rebounders, it's going to be a turnover essentially and going back the other way. In fact, I used to like running this with a 13U team last year, where we would play it so tight on some teams because some teams just could not shoot a 3, where only one player was allowed out of the key at a time. And I've actually ran this with my 11U team this year once in a single game, because the other team just could not shoot. So we stacked the key and they were unable to drive, in which case they only scored like 14 points the whole entire game. However, I do need to say, if you are going to be running a zone defense with kids, you have to teach man-to-man defense first. You can't just go into a game and say, run a zone. You can't just go into a practice and say, run a zone and teach a zone. Because if you teach man first, when you actually get over to teaching zone, it's extremely easy. However, if you go and teach a zone first, it's extremely hard to teach the zone because they're going to be hearing, oh, I need to stand in this area and I only guard the guy in this area. So they become very stagnant. And when teams run zones on me, on my teams, and I see that those players are not necessarily moving where they need to move to cover their zones, then I know that that coach has never taught that team man-to-man. And I am going to make sure that we cut through those gaps and get to the rim or shoot a lot of threes to try and pull them out of that zone because they can't stop us. And then as soon as the coach finally says they switch over to man, guess what? We torch them because they never learned man. So now they're guarding their man, and now they're not playing help defense. Now they're not going and trying to hedge. They're not trying to do anything inside of that man other than, this is my guy, I'm guarding my guy, I don't need to worry about anyone else except for my guy. And when that happens, it's even easier to torch teams. So you have to teach man-to-man defense first and then teach zone defense after, because then it makes teaching man easier, teaching zone easier. If you go to a zone defense and try to teach man, it's harder to teach zone and it's impossible to teach man. So there's my thoughts. But really, when it comes down to running these zones, it almost is cheating because you're forcing the other team to do something that they're probably weak on. Now, running a half-court trap zone, for example, a 1-3-1, which is extremely deadly when it comes to youth basketball, especially if you run it where you're trapping in the corners and not just trying to pressure at the free throw line extended or try and double team the wings. If you're trying to run it as a trap in these spots, it's extremely hard to be able to beat, because what happens is most teams at the younger level, 9U, 10U, 11U, even 12U, they don't know necessarily to try and feed the ball into that middle area. And if you're going up against a team that has maybe a parent coach who has never faced against a zone trap, they may not know to be able to feed the middle, which will make it extremely easy to be able to beat. So what usually happens is these players will come down, they'll set up their 4 wide. Player 1 is then going to either pass to left or right, and if ran properly, this player intercepts, goes back the other way. If it's ran properly. If it's not ran properly and player 3 misses, well, guess what? Now player 1 needs to trap, player 3 needs to trap, and I personally run it where player 2 moves over, player 5 drops, player 4 moves over. This way, the paint is always guarded by a big guy. A lot of coaches will have it ran where player 2 will pop out, player 5 stays here, and player 4 drops. If you run it this way, which I've ran it this way in the past occasionally with smaller teams who can actually run fast to get down to the post, because this is a very long distance. And also, if this guy is cutting from that weak side, it's going to take a long time for player 4 to get down there, and it's an easy layup. I've learned from my mistakes. So the best way to run it is to have player 5 drop, player 4 move over, and now player 4 watches that reverse pass, player 5 watches the post, player 2 watches the corner pass, and you should be able to get an interception. Now, if player 1 just decides, well, I can't get the pass to the corners, what's going to happen next is they will usually try to dribble towards that side. Player 2 gets in the way, nobody knows what to really do, and then, again, trapped, 2 moves over, 5 moves down, 3 moves over, and it's done. It's finished, no more. The next option that teams usually will run against this is they'll do the long pass down to the corners. Well, usually when that happens, player 1 will start dribbling over to this side, which will allow player 2 to shadow that side. If they make that long pass, player 2 should be able to intercept, and we're going back down the other way. And if you've got some fast players, you can tell this guy, don't even dribble the ball, just look down court, and it's going to be an easy layup every single time. So that's why a half-court trap is so deadly and feels like it's cheating, because for one, players are not used to at the younger level being pressured right at half. A lot of leagues, for example, the leagues that we are in up here in Canada, you can play defense at half court. You cannot full court press until the second half, and you have to be under a 15-point lead, which means that if we're killing a team by 30, I can continue to run this to run the score up so that we get our ranking higher. That's an issue when it comes to rep basketball to some people, because you benefit from beating a team by 60, 70, and 80 points massively. While when it comes to school basketball, anything over a 10 or a 15-point win doesn't matter. You're not really improving your ranking at all. While in rep basketball, AAU basketball, you actually get a big bonus on the ranking side if you kick a team's butt by like 50, 60, 70. Now, when it comes to a full court press zone trap, the diamond is one of the most popular. The idea is if the ball goes over here, player 3 and 1 are going to trap. Player 4 moves down for the interception for the reverse pass. And then we're going to have player 5 slightly move over. He may be covering middle. He may be covering more on this side. Personally, I like him to cover more middle, and player 2 starts shadowing this side. But it depends on the situation. If they pass a lot to this side, player 5 might want to go over and try and intercept. And then we would have player 2 up middle. Now you're noticing that I set this up with forwards here, a point guard, fastest guy here, our slowest, generally speaking, big guy here, and another fast guard at the back. The idea is any long passes, player 2 should be fast enough to pick them off. Player 5 is going to be the big man up middle, and we're going to have our forwards here, and forwards, generally speaking, at least with my team, have longer arms, which will allow us to intercept and trap the ball a lot better, and obviously player 1 being the fastest guy on the court. Now, why does this feel like cheating? Well, the reason why this feels like cheating is because a lot of teams don't practice against a full court press. I've actually learned from coaching with other clubs that a lot of teams only get to practice with a half a court. At least up here in Canada, a lot of clubs try to save as much money as possible because it costs $150 every practice just to rent a gym, which means that a lot of times there's 2 teams practicing and they're usually drastically different ages. And when that happens, you can't really run a full court. You can't try and learn how to beat a press full court because you only have a half court. And even in a half court, you can't really practice against the trap either. Or a half court trap. So by running this, if you're within that 15-point range, at least here in Canada, you can really destroy teams. I've had a game where we were down by 1 point, and then within a 4-minute shift, because we have shifts, within that 4-minute shift, we went from being down by 1 point to being up by 18 in one shift alone. That's a massive run, and that was all from a full court press. We weren't running a zone press there. We were running a man-to-man blitz. However, that is what happened for us. So just by running a full court press and pressing and making it hard for the other team to dribble right away is now going to allow you to win more games just because you're getting a lot more steals. Anyways, I hope that this video has helped. Make sure to always teach man-to-man defense first before you run zones. Makes life so much easier. However, I hope that you've enjoyed. Hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys again next time. Make sure to go check out my Unbeatable Zone Defense book that is down in the description as well.